And yet another example of the Biden administration weaponizing the legal system, the Department of Justice recently indicted Dr. Ethan Heim, the whistleblower who exposed Texas Children's Hospital for secretly conducting transgender surgeries and treatments on minors. Now, the felony charges against Dr. Heim are related to an alleged violation of medical records laws. But according to many familiar with the case, the documents disclosed did not contain identifiable patient information. If no laws were broken, was this indictment an effort to punish Dr. Heim by putting him through the process of having to defend himself? And was this indictment really an effort to silence the next potential whistleblower? Join me now to discuss the latest on this and more. Roger Severino, Vice President of Domestic Policy at the Heritage Foundation. He previously served as the Director of the Department of, or the Office, rather, of Civil Rights at Health and Human Services in the Trump administration. Roger, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
So the full nature of the charges have not been disclosed to Dr. Heim, who has a court appearance scheduled for next week. It is believed to fall under the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, in which you have extensive experience. So tell us, how could he have violated that by blowing the whistle on the hospital doing these secret surgeries on minors?
Well, that is the $10,000 question, right? You can cooperate with law enforcement under HIPAA, and especially if there's no PII, personally identifiable information. So I was the nation's HIPAA regulator for 4 years under President Trump, and this is outrageous. We had never issued any sort of recommendation for prosecution for HIPAA violations, of which we had legions of them, because the criminal punishment is essentially a death sentence for doctors for a HIPAA violation, especially here where it's illegal to do these experimental surgeries on minors, and you have a good faith whistleblower trying to say, as a mandatory reporter, this is what's still going on in Texas Children's Hospital. And this is the weaponization of the federal government to have the DOJ, the Inspector General's office, knock on your door and to say, hey, what have you been doing to protect kids? And we're going to go after you for doing this under HIPAA, of all things. And this reminds me, earlier, the Biden administration said that you cannot cooperate with law enforcement without violating HIPAA when it comes to abortion. So they're trying to say that if you have information about illegal abortions in Texas or elsewhere, you may also be criminally liable if you're cooperating with law enforcement, even in cases where they have a valid subpoena and a warrant. It just seems that there is no end to the weaponization of the justice system. They are going after President Trump at the highest levels. They're going after good faith doctors that are blowing the whistles at lower levels. That means every single person that is against the Biden ideological agenda is at risk of some sort of prosecution. It's a sad day.
So, Roger, this information that a hospital is conducting, whether it be abortions or whether it be these surgical procedures on minors, that can be that information can be released without releasing personal information that would disclose who the patient was, which appears to be the case here with Dr. Heim. So that would not be in violation of HIPAA.
If it is de-identified information, it is not covered information. So the question is, was it fully de-identified? But regardless of what actually happened in this case, the fact that they're using a criminal penalty to go after a whistleblower is absolutely unheard of. Again, for 4 years, this was my bread and butter of making sure and pursuing these sorts of cases. The remedy, if there is a violation, I'm not saying there's one here, but if there is, it's civil. You get a penalty. You don't have, armed U.S. Attorney's Office or FBI agents, folks coming knocking at your door and then threatening to put you in jail for blowing the whistle to protect children from potentially unlawful activity. This is unheard of. It just shows that there is an ideological bent to this administration that stops at nothing to get its political way, and people that it deems to be political enemies are going to be persecuted. And here's another thing. They're trying to break this man. It's very expensive when the process is the penalty. He now has to defend himself, his good name, his reputation as a doctor. He now has a give, send, go campaign and already raised $200,000. Christopher Rufo has tweeted about it to help support this man in his endeavors in defending himself against a DOJ and a Biden administration that is run amok.
So just to be very clear here, Roger, you're saying this is unprecedented in what we're seeing happen with the Department of Justice.
Oh, absolutely. Again, HIPAA is by and large for civil penalties where you actually pay money for violations. We had major ones where where the entities were irresponsible and millions of personally identifiable records were put out there. We didn't threaten to put these folks in jail for that. People were really hurt. They were harmed, but we're going to throw them in jail for it. But now the Biden administration is trying to go after somebody protecting children with jail time.
So this is more about a scare tactic, intimidation, silencing those who would challenge the ideological agenda of this administration and the left.
Oh, without a doubt. And I'll go back to the abortion example. They are saying that abortion gets a special carve-out under HIPAA. These regulations were issued very recently that says HIPAA is okay to cooperate with law enforcement with one broad exception, and that is abortion. So if you have a warrant from the state of Texas, for example, for illegal chemical abortion, and you want to track down who this abortionist is that's hurting women with the illegal chemical abortion pills, a warrant would not be enough. They would have to have an independent factual basis to be able to comply with a warrant, which means these are just regular doctors that are dealing with the aftermath of illegal abortions. Either they comply with a state warrant that says you must give us information about these abortionists that are handing out these pills, or you risk prosecution from the Biden administration for cooperating with state law enforcement, which means this is all about ideology, whether it's about abortion or transgender sex change operations, so-called, on minors. It's not about the science, it's not about the law, it's about pushing this ideology. And if you get in the way, they are threatening jail time for you.
Well, this puts doctors in an untenable situation, because if you're in a state and you get a warrant, a subpoena for this information, you can be held in contempt for not complying with that warrant. But yet, on the other hand, you've got the Biden administration coming after you.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. When ideology clouds everything, and look what's happening with President Trump, look what's happening in the Department of Defense with abortion. They even say that if you're an abortionist, you can get indemnified. The federal government will pay for you if you commit a criminal abortion.